So, Jai Bhim to all, and we are into the third session of a reading, the philosophy of Hinduism. We have covered about 20 pages in the last two readings, and they were very dense and full of a lot of ideas that needed a lot of careful discussion. Basically, Babasaheb Ambedkar is trying through this text understand the philosophy of religion with a method of inquiry into through understanding the revolutions. And we have seen that Babasaheb Ambedkar had talked about the Copernican revolution and the Darwinian revolution that changed the religion. And then subsequently he talked about the internal revolution in the religion itself, in terms of what happened to the concept of God, what happened to the other areas, the relationship between man and the society, man and God, and between man and man. And we have had a very comprehensive sort of a discussion on that. Today, we are going to start with the reading by Shashank is going to read, and we will be starting from where we left last time, that is from the page number 21. So I invite Shashank to please lead the reading, and we will pause as and when required. So Shashank, please carry on. Let me help you to share the screen.
Yes.
Advanced sharing option, all participants. Okay, now you can share.
Perfect. Is my screen visible?
Fantastic. Yes, fantastic.
Great. Perfect. So there have been two religious revolutions. One was an external revolution, the other was an internal revolution. The external revolution was concerned with the field within the authority of religion was to prevail. The internal revolution had to do with the changes in religion as a scheme of divine governance for human society. The external revolution was not really a religious revolution at all. It was a revolt of science against the extraterritorial jurisdiction assumed by religion over a field which did not belong. The internal revolution was a real revolution, or maybe compared to any other political revolution, such as the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution. It involved a constitutional change. By this revolution, the scheme of divine governance came to be altered, amended, and reconstituted.
Yes, yeah. I think this paragraph summarizes what has the discussion which has gone back in the previous pages about the internal and external revolution. External revolution, as we see that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has said that religion has the extra jurisdiction over the areas which was not concern of the religion, and that was challenged by the external revolution. He is not calling the external revolution as a religious revolution. He is calling the external revolution like the revolt of science against the extraterritorial jurisdiction assumed by religion. But I think what he is trying to talk about emphatically is internal revolution. And he's saying that just like the French Revolution or Russian Revolution has caused changes within, just like that, the internal revolution has caused the constitutional change, and we challenged the scheme of divine governance. So the divine governance came to be altered, amended, and reconstituted. It's a very interesting sort of a line here. So I just want to take a pause. The scheme of divine governance came to be altered, amended, and reconstituted. All right.
Okay. How profound have been the changes with this internal revolution has made in the antique scheme of divine governance can be easily seen. By this revolution, God has ceased to be a member of community. Thereby, he has become impartial. God has ceased to be the father of man in the physical sense of the word. He has become the creator of the universe. The breaking of this blood bond has made it possible to hold that God is good. By this revolution, man has ceased to be a blind worshipper of a God, doing nothing but obeying his command. Thereby, man has become a responsible person required to justify his belief in God's commandments by his conviction. By this revolution, God has ceased to be merely the protector of society, and social interest in gross have ceased to be the center of the divine order. Society and man have changed places as center of this divine order. It is man who has become the center of it.
Right.
All this analysis, yeah.
Right. So you see the impact of the internal revolution that took place in the religion, that the place of God shifted from the father of man to the creator of the universe. And it changed the entire paradigm, as we have seen in the previous discussion, that the God was the part of the community, and the community considered itself to be these sons and daughters of the creator God. And the God was not different from the communities, but internal revolution displaced this sort of a God and replaced it with a God who was considered to be the creator of the universe. And therefore, I think what the significant point here is that here the society in the previous God-centric world, the society was at the center, the community was at the center, the communal security was at the center. But now here, these places changed. Now, instead of society, the very man become the center of it. And I think that's very significant revolution, that the society was displaced from the central place and was replaced by the man himself.
All this analysis of the revolution, the ruling concepts of religion as a scheme of divine governance had one purpose, namely to discover the norm for evaluating the philosophy of a religion. The impatient reader may not ask, where are those norms and what are they? The reader may not have found a norm specified by their names in the foregoing discussion. But he could not have failed to notice that the whole of this religious revolution was raging around the norms for judging what is right and what is wrong. If he has not, let me make explicit what has been implicit in the whole of this discussion. We began with the distinction between the antique society and modern society. As has been pointed out, they differed in the type of divine governance they accepted as their religious ideals. At one end of the revolution was the antique society with its religious ideal in which the end was society. At the other end of the revolution is the modern society with its religious ideal in which the end is the individual. To put the same fact in the terms of the norm, it can be said that the norm or the criteria for judging right and wrong in the antique society was utility, while the norm or the criteria for judging right and wrong in the modern society is justice. The religious revolution was not thus a revolution in the religious organization of society, resulting in the shifting of the center from society to the individual. It was a revolution in the norms.
So this is where Babasaheb Ambedkar wanted to lead the discussion to, when he was discussing the internal revolution or the religious revolution, and he has talked about the scientific revolution against the religion. But here he's not confining his inquiry into the religious revolution, and basically the conclusions that he has been drawing is that it was always about a norm to judge whether the philosophy is right or wrong. And this norm for judging what is right and what is wrong has shifted, because earlier the center of the religion was the community or the society. As we have seen, that God was a communal entity, the concept of God was a communal itself, and it was related to one's birth in the community. And it shifted in a way that the individual became the center of the religion. And when it shifted like that, what has significantly happened is the change in the norm. Initially, the norm to judge what was right and wrong was the utility, because the society was at the center. So whether you are useful to the society or not, whether your presence supports the society or not, that was a norm. So everything was driven by the social norms in terms of your utility. But now, in the modern times, the criteria to judge the right and wrong in the modern society is justice. And this is the sort of the highest point of the discussion that has taken place so far in this paper by Babasaheb Ambedkar, that he wanted to arrive at this conclusion that the norm or the criteria for judging right and wrong in the modern society is justice, with the individual at the center of it. And this last sentence is very instructive. The religious revolution was not just a revolution in the religious organization of the society. So not just the religious organization of the society changed, but what has happened is in the shifting of the center from society to the individual. And hence, it was a revolution in the norms. So the individual was not supposed to be the servant of the society, but the individual himself become the center of the judging what is right or wrong. And that criteria, that norm, was justice. And I think let's bear this word in mind, justice. And through the criteria of justice, Babasaheb is going to examine what we are studying today is the philosophy of religion. So go on, Shashank. Thank you.
Some may demur to the norms I have suggested. It may be that it is a new way of reaching them. But to my mind, there is no doubt that they are the real norms by which to judge the philosophy of religion. In the first place, the norm must enable people to judge what is right and wrong in the conduct of men. In the second place, the norm must be appropriate to the current notion of what constitutes the moral good. From both these points of view, they appear to be the true norms. They enable us to judge what is right and wrong. They are appropriate to the society which adopted them. Utility as a criteria was appropriate to the antique world in which society, being the end, the moral good was held to be something which had social utility. Justice as a criteria became appropriate to the modern world in which individual, being the end, the moral good was held to be something which does justice to the individual. There may be controversy as to which of the two norms is morally superior. But I do not think there can be any serious controversy that these are not the norms. If it is said that these norms are not transcendental enough, my reply is that if a norm whereby one is to judge the philosophy of religion must be godly, it must be earthly. At any rate, these are the norms I propose to adopt in examining the philosophy of Hinduism.
So this is it, this whole discussion that Babasaheb Ambedkar had aimed at is to find the criteria to judge right and wrong, because he has begun with the discussion on the norm or a criteria to judge whether something is right or wrong. And I think the second point about the norms that Babasaheb Ambedkar is making, that the norm must be appropriate to current notion of what constitutes the moral good. So the concept of moral good, as to what constitutes the moral good, depends on the current notion. That means the moral good, as we can think through, has changed from time to time. So in the antique society, the moral good was considered to be the sort of the welfare of the society, and everybody was born to serve the social ends, the interest of the society, and everybody was to be utilized in order to serve the interest of the society. But as the internal revolution or the religious revolution took place, that norm of utility changed to the norm of justice, and the criteria to judge whether something is morally good or bad was related to what we can say the concept of justice. And he says, if a norm whereby one is to judge the philosophy of religion must be godly, it must also be earthly, because the religions cannot be separate from the day-to-day affairs of the people, because it impacts the day-to-day lives of the people, it impacts the national lives of the people, and therefore it is not just about the God, but it's also about earth. It means here and now, the current society, whatever surrounds us. All right. Is there anything else anybody would like to contribute to?
No, sir, it's perfect now.
Go ahead.
Okay, let's go ahead.
This is a long detour, but it was a necessary preliminary to any inquiry into the main question. However, when one begins the inquiry, one meets with an initial difficulty. The Hindu is not prepared to face the inquiry. He either argues that religion is of no importance, or he takes shelter behind a view fostered by the study of comparative religion, that all religions are good. There is no doubt that both these views are mistaken and untenable. Religion as a social force cannot be ignored. Religion has been aptly described by Herbert Spencer as the weft which everywhere crosses the warp of history. This is true of every society. But religion has not only crossed everywhere the warp of Indian history, it forms the warp and woof of the Hindu mind. The life of the Hindu is regulated by religion at every moment of his life. It orders him how during life he should conduct himself and how on death his body shall be disposed of. It tells him how and when he shall indulge in his sexual impulses. It tells him what ceremonies are to be performed when a child is born, how he should name, how he should cut the hair on his head, how he should perform his first feeding. It tells him what occupation he can take to, what woman he should marry. It tells him with whom he should dine and what food he should eat, what vegetables are lawful and what are forbidden. It tells how he should spend his day, how many times he should eat, how many times he should pray. There is no act of the Hindu which is not covered or ordained by religion. It seems strange that the educated Hindus should come to look upon it as though it was a matter of indifference.
Go on, go on.
Besides, religion is a social force. As I pointed out, religion stands for a scheme of divine governance. The schemes become an ideal for society to follow. The ideal may be non-existent in the sense that it is something which is constructed. But although non-existent, it is real. For an ideal, it has full operative force which is inherent in every ideal. Those who deny the importance of religion not only forget this, they also fail to realize how great is the potency and sanction that lies behind a religious ideal as a compound with that of a purely secular ideal. This is probably due to the lag which one sees between the real and the ideal, which is always present whether the ideal is religious or secular. But the relative potency of the two ideals is to be measured by another test, namely their power to override the practical instincts of a man. The ideal is concerned with something that is remote. The practical instincts of a man are concerned with the immediate present. Now placed as against the force of the practical instincts of a man, the two ideals show the difference in the unmistaken manner. The practical instincts of a man do yield to the prescriptions of a religious ideal. However, much the two are opposed to each other. The practical instincts of a man do not, on the other hand, yield to the secular ideal if the two are in conflict. This means that a religious ideal has a hold on mankind, irrespective of an earthly gain. This can never be said of a purely secular ideal. Its power depends upon its power to confer a material benefit. This shows how great is the difference in the potency and sanction of the two ideals over the human mind. A religious ideal never fails to work so long as there is faith in that ideal. To ignore religion is to ignore a live wire.
We will take a pause here because these paragraphs are so important for us to discuss. So we begin with a short paragraph that Shashank has just read from this paper, and about why Babasaheb Ambedkar has taken 22 pages to arrive at the justice as a norm for the modern society. And he says that the Hindus are not open for the inquiry because they think that, like all religions, are good. And Babasaheb Ambedkar was somebody who was ready to explore the religious ideas as well, because the religions are considered to be so sacred that their ideas and ideals cannot be criticized. But Babasaheb Ambedkar says that there is no idea, there is nothing Sanatan in the world, there is nothing sacred in the world that cannot be questioned. Everything, every idea, whether it's a religious idea or even a scientific idea, has to be questioned. And therefore, I think this paragraph, the short paragraph, is very important, because most of the times we try to hide in the garb of all religions being the same. And in the Indic languages, it's called Sarva Dharma Sambhav, that we should have respect for all religions. But that is okay. But unless we examine the ideals of the religion, we cannot know whether those religious ideas are right or wrong, whether they benefit the society or not. And therefore, I think this second paragraph where Babasaheb Ambedkar says that the religion is everywhere, and it forms the warp and hoop of the Hindu mind. So, it governs all the aspects of Hindu mind. And that is what is very important in terms of the impact or the force of Hindu religion on the people. And Babasaheb Ambedkar goes on saying that it covers every aspect of an individual's life, what they should eat, when they should eat, whom they should marry, and so on and so forth. So this religion as a social force cannot be ignored, because that is the fact that we witness all the time. And therefore, this discussion that follows in the book about the religion as a social force and as the scheme becomes ideal for the society. And then Babasaheb Ambedkar goes into, I think, something very important, the idea around the ideals. And he talks about the two ideals, the religious ideals and the secular ideals. And he says that in terms of the potency, the religious ideals are more powerful. They are so powerful that they can override the practical instincts of the people. While the secular ideals, for example, the secular ideals, if we compare the secular ideals in the constitution of a country like liberty, equality, and fraternity, they are the so-called secular ideals. Even if they are ideals, they are enshrined in the constitution of India. They are the constitutional values and the ideals, but they don't move the people the way the religious ideals move the people. They override even the practical instincts of the humankind. And that's very much true when you look at this country, where when a rocket is to be launched in the space, what happens? There is some puja, there is some kind of putting up of a swastika or some kind of a religious symbol. Even if people buy computers or anything that they buy in that has been given to us by the technology or the science of today, the people still worship it. The cars, for example, and so on and so forth. So you see, this is something which is very interesting, the study of ideals. And mind it, the ideas govern us, all of us, whether they are the religious ideals of any religion, they govern us. And therefore, the ideals are important. These symbols are important. Even if they might be remote somewhere out there, they have this potential to work on our minds, to control our minds. And we have seen this in the society around us, and not only in India, but in other countries also. The religious ideals, like in Islam, the religious ideas are so powerful that they can They can cause people to do certain things. Likewise in Christianity, likewise in other religions, there are these ideals which have a tremendous power and potential to even override the practical instinct of the man. And I particularly like this last line of Babasaheb Ambedkar here. And this is very significant. It's a very small line, but it communicates something very important. To ignore religion is to ignore a live wire. We cannot ignore the religion. People might say that we should not launch our inquiry into religion. We definitely should, because the religion as a social force affects the society. It affects the lives of the people. So these are very, very profound paragraphs that Babasaheb Ambedkar has put into this paper, and we need to really think about it all the time. Anybody would like to say anything, comment on, reflect? Or should we?
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, let's move ahead.
Okay. Again, to hold that all religions are true and good is to cherish a belief which is positively and demonstrably wrong. This belief, one is sorry to say, is the result of what is known as the study of comparative religion. Comparative religion has done on one great service to humanity. It has broken down the claim and arrogance of revealed religion as being the only true and good religions of study. While it is true that comparative religion has abrogated the capricious distinction between the true and false religions based on purely arbitrary and priori considerations, it has brought in its wake some false notion about religion. The most harmful one is the one I have mentioned, namely that all religions are equally good and that there is no necessity of discriminating between them. Nothing can be a greater error than this. Religion is an institution or an influence, and like all social influences and institution, it may help or it may harm a society which is in its grip. As pointed out by Professor Tyler, religion is one of the mightiest motors in the history of mankind, which form as well as tore asunder nations, united as well as divided empires, which sanctioned the most atrocious and barbarous deeds, the most libidinous customs, inspired the most admirable acts of heroism, self-renunciation and devotion, which occasioned the most sanguinary wars, rebellions and persecutions, as well as brought about the freedom, happiness and peace of nations. At one time, a partition of tyranny, at another, breaking its chains. Now calling into existence and fostering a new and brilliant civilization. Then the deadly foe to progress, science and art. A force which shows such strange contrast in its result can be accepted as good without examining the form it takes and the ideal it serves. Everything depends upon what social ideal a given religion as a divine scheme of governance hold out. This is a question which is not evolved by the science of comparative religion. Indeed, it begins where the comparative religion ends. The Hindu is merely trying to avoid it by saying that although religions are many, they are equally good. For they are not. However much the Hindu may seek to bark the inquiry into the philosophy of Hinduism, there is no escape. He must face it.
All right, so these religions are, they are good and they are bad, and they are all this the harms they might cause, or the way they might help has been stipulated here in this thing. One thing Babasaheb Ambedkar is saying, that not all religions are good. There are, they are not, the religions are different, and he's saying that every religion has to face the inquiry. We cannot balk the inquiry. We have to, every religion has to face the inquiry. And I think that's very significant, because the criteria of justice and then Babasaheb Ambedkar says that where the comparative study of religion ends, because Babasaheb Ambedkar was someone who also attempted in a very short sort of way the comparative study of religions when he wrote the Buddha and the Future of His Religion. So if you read this tract written by Babasaheb Ambedkar, which was published in the Mahabodhi Society, where he has compared briefly the founders of various religions like the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and then Krishna, and so on and so forth. So what Babasaheb Ambedkar is saying, that comparative religion study of religion is okay, but where the comparative study of religion ends, the real inquiry begins into the religions as to what social ideals they advocate, what kind of a society they propose, and we cannot shun that inquiry into the religion from this point of view of what ideals, what social ideals they promote. And this is what Babasaheb Ambedkar is going to do now, to inquire into Hindu religion as to, in terms of its social ideal, and going to judge whether it gives justice or not. Anybody wants to contribute?
Sir, one query,
Yes,
sir.
please.
Sir, in the Tile quotes, kindly throw lights on it, please, sir.
See, it's very explanatory in a sense that the history of mankind, the history of humanity, is powered by the religions. You look at the world history and you see that the war, the Crusades, for example, the fight between the Muslims and the Christians, and they had several crusades. A lot of people died. Even today, we see that it's the people term it as a religious war when they attack the countries in the Central Asia. For example, the Iraq war and the Kuwait war, and all these wars in the Middle East were termed as the religious war against the Christianity or the Muslims. So you see, this religion has a tremendous power, and we also know that some of the heroes that have born out of the religious conviction have been very, very impactful for the world. We can name them, and so you know, the religion has inspired people to do something good. The religion has also inspired people to do something very harmful, something very obnoxious, something very violent. So we see that, you know, when we look at the religious ideas, some ideas are good and some ideas are very bad. So that is what the Tyler's paragraph is all about, right? Sometimes the religious, yes.
It's a sort of kind of a brainwashing.
It's a sort of a brainwashing as well, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Section 3.
Yep. Now to begin with the subject, I propose to apply both the test of justice and the test of utility to judge the philosophy of Hinduism. First, I will apply the test of justice. Before doing so, I want to explain what I mean by the principle of justice. No one has expounded it better than the Professor Bergbaum. As interpreted by him, the principle of justice is a compedious one and includes most of the other principles which have become the foundation of a moral order. Justice has always evoked ideas of equality, of proportion, of compensation. Equity signifies equality. Rules and regulation, right and righteousness are concerned with equality and value. If all men are equal, all men are of the same essence, and the common essence entitle them to the same fundamental rights and to equal liberty. In short, justice is simply another name for liberty, equality, and fraternity. It is in this sense I shall be using justice as a criteria to judge Hinduism.
Okay, wait. So this section number 3 begins with a very profound sort of a comment by Babasaheb Ambedkar. And he says that he is going to apply these two tests, the test of justice and the test of utility, to judge the philosophy of Hinduism. And he says that he is going to apply the test of justice to study. And I think this singular paragraph is so instructive of the philosophy of Babasaheb Ambedkar himself, because he has said that his social philosophy is the philosophy that is based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. And this is very instructive for us, because according to him, the principle of justice is a compedious one. That means, it is something like it's something like a bundle of lot of values, lot of principles. So from the principle of justice, lot of principles can evolve, but the foundational principle is the principle of justice, and that is the foundation of moral order. So moral order in the world is very important. When Babasaheb Ambedkar connected with it, with justice. So people talk about the moral order, the social order, the public order, and so on and so forth. But the criteria, the foundation of the moral order is justice. And justice has always evoked the ideas of equality. So the connection of the idea of equality with justice is so significant. And these definitions that we see, they look very small to us. These sentences look very, very short to us. But if we unlock them, they can constitute the entire sort of the philosophy that we all try to propose. See, now this is what Babasaheb Ambedkar says. Justice has always evoked ideas of equality, of proportion, of compensation. So you see, all the communities which have faced the injustice, there has to be the proportion of compensation to the communities, compensation to the people. Equity signifies equality. So it is not other way around, that equality signifies equity. So equity means like equal share in everything. So if you apply this logic to the idea of reservation, to the principle of reservation, the principle of representation, everything becomes clear. So the simple sentence like equity signifies equality, not other way around. Equality doesn't give you equity. But when the people have equity in the resources, people have equity in everything, then only the equality comes into existence. So rules and regulations, right and righteousness are concerned with equality in value. If all men are equal, all men of the same essence and of the common essence, entitled them to the same fundamental rights and to equal liberty. You see, so from the basic principle of justice as a compendium one, from which a lot of these values or a lot of principles of liberty, principles of equality, principles of fraternity can be devised and then developed into policies, developed into the frameworks that can promote all these values, is what Babasaheb Ambedkar is intending here. And he says that in this sense, I shall be using justice as a criteria to judge Hinduism. How profound that is. This paragraph is so profound and it's so I would say important for us to grasp. And I think Babasaheb Ambedkar uses some very, I would say, a language which is very strong, which is powerful, and at the same time, which is so communicable to us. Anything, any ideas, any reflections?
Sir, I think these words has been the basis of our foundation laid on the on which our constitution stands.
Exactly.
And totally preamble is reflecting in these words. Whole preamble is the mirror image of all these words.
Exactly.
Means I'm glad we have explored this thing.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Now it's very profound. It's very thrilling to read this word. Every single sentence is so profound here. So profound paragraph, I would say.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Anybody would like to comment?
Sir, can we means devise these lines on timelines? Means when the constitution preamble was framed and when all these words on the basis of these thoughts, Babasaheb has created that base and foundation for our constitution.
Exactly. Yes. Sumesh bhai, what has happened? This new book written by Akash Singh Rathore, he claims and he proves that Babasaheb Ambedkar drafted the entire preamble of the Constitution. He was carrying that draft in his pocket. So in one of the
Wow.
meetings, he just handed it over to the people and it was accepted.
Great.
Okay, but if you see his discussion on liberty, equality, and fraternity, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
If you look at Annihilation of Caste, you will find the discussion on justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. That's in 1936 we are talking about.
Very true.
So he's talking about all these values from the beginning of his movement. So he's when you talk about the social justice movement that Babasaheb Ambedkar initiated, and which culminated into the foundation of the India based on those values that Babasaheb Ambedkar, cherished and fought for. At least in theory, we have a country which is based on justice.
Yes.
In theory, but we know that the religious ideals are still dominating the people's consciousness.
Directive principles may have been evolved from here only.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Mahasenji.
Here Babasaheb had mentioned all these things in his speech in the Constituent Assembly on 26th November
Yes.
1949. And he had said that all these what has been enshrined in the preamble of the Constitution is taken from his Guru Buddha.
Yes.
So
Yes.
and he said many people say that he has taken from French Revolution, but he said no, I have taken it from my Guru Buddha.
Good.
So this is means what we are discussing is nothing but Buddhism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, you are right, Mahasenji.
Yeah.
We have to apply this criteria of utility and justice. Some of you have to have this project of judging the Buddhism itself.
Yes.
Wow, great, sir. Very
Isn't it?
insightful. Yeah.
We cannot leave our own religion.
Sir, do the favor. Kindly give the brief guideline on this, and we will try to frame.
Yeah. I think we have to do
And,
it.
and why Gandhi and Nehru were afraid of Babasaheb? Because of his language and the wealth of knowledge he possessed.
Good.
He was Nehru's that law has been already rejected.
Yeah. We have no idea. We have no idea what has happened.
Was failed.
Yeah, we have no idea what has happened with the coming of Constitution. There is a great scholar, and his name is Lalmani Joshi. Died very early, but he was a Buddhist, and he wrote a lot on Buddhism. And he said that what Babasaheb Ambedkar has done by writing the Constitution, he has destroyed the authority of all the religious texts.
Oh, sadhu.
And he's saying, he's going one step further. He's saying what Guru Nanak, what Kabir, what Buddha couldn't do, Babasaheb Ambedkar did it.
Wow, salute. Hats off, sir. What a voice.
I will find this exact quotation of Lalmani Joshi, and where he says that what Babasaheb Ambedkar has done in terms of denouncing the authority of the Vedas, of Manusmriti, which could not be destroyed by any other people. He says that in a way Babasaheb Ambedkar has done something more than what
Yeah,
Nanak couldn't do, or Kabir couldn't do, or even the Buddha couldn't do.
yeah.
This is Lalmani Joshi, one of the finest scholars of Buddhism.
Yeah,
Yes,
and this is the legacy that we all have to preserve and take forward.
That's it.
And about these qualities, Babasaheb wanted that all our community people should work on that.
Yes.
Not. I was thinking about his Rangoon speech just now. He had mentioned that lot of stress is being given on meditation. But meditation is not the essential part of Buddhism, like that he has mentioned.
Yes.
Because he wanted that immediate needs and the wounds being faced by the layman.
Yes.
Should be eradicated first.
Yes.
And he said that I wanted to point out the social aspect of the Buddha.
Yes. Today, I think in the context of the philosophy of religion, as I was saying, that the norms that Babasaheb Ambedkar has used to judge the philosophy of religion, whether it's right or wrong, based on the two norms, utility and justice, I would recommend Mahasenji and others to look at how these norms can be, used to study even the Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the takeaway from this last paragraph is this: that justice, the principle of justice is a compedious one, which is a bundle of different principles from which a lot of different principles can evolve, like the principle of equality, principle of liberty, and principle of fraternity. And according to Babasaheb Ambedkar, the justice is another name for liberty, equality, and fraternity. And this is the justice as a criteria Babasaheb Ambedkar is going to judge Hindu religion or Hinduism. Okay, so should we request Shashank to read further, because we have to go for 5 more pages?
Yes. So which of these tenets does Hinduism recognize? Let us take the question one by one. Does Hinduism recognize equality? The question instantaneously brings to one's mind the caste system. One striking feature of the caste system is that the different castes do not stand as an horizontal series of all on the same plane. It is a system in which the different castes are placed in a vertical series, one above the other. Manu may not be responsible for the creation of caste. Manu preached the sanctity of the Varna. And as I have shown, Varna is the parent of caste. In that sense, Manu can be charged with being the progenitor, if not the author of the caste system. Whatever be the case as to the guilt of Manu regarding the caste system, there can be no question that Manu is responsible for upholding the principle of gradation and rank. In the scheme of Manu, the Brahmin is placed at the first in rank. Below him is a Kshatriya, below Atishudra, the untouchables. The system of rank and the gradation is simply another way of enunciating the principle of inequality, so that it may be truly said that Hinduism does not recognize equality. This inequality in status is not merely the inequality that one sees in the warrant of precedence prescribed for a ceremonial gathering at a king's court. It is a permanent social relationship among the classes to be observed, to be enforced at all times, in all places, and for all purposes. It will take too long to show how in every phase of life, Manu has introduced and made inequality the vital force of life. But I will illustrate it by taking a few examples, such as slavery, marriage, and rule of law. Manu recognizes slavery, but he confined it to the Shudras. Only Shudras could be made slaves of the 3 higher classes, but the higher classes could not be the slaves of the Shudra. But evidently, practice differed from the law of Manu, and not only Shudras happened to become slaves, but members of the other 3 classes also become slaves. When this was discovered to be the case, a new rule was enacted by a successor of Manu, namely Narada. This new rule of Narada runs as follows. Verse 39. In the inverse order of the 4 castes, slavery is not ordained except where a man violates the duties peculiar to his caste. Slavery in that respect is analogous to the condition of a wife. Recognition of a slavery was bad enough, but if the rule of slavery had been left free to take its own course, it would have had at least one beneficial effect. It would have been a leveling force. The foundation of caste would have been destroyed. For under it, a Brahmin might have become the slave of the untouchable, and the untouchable would have become the master of the Brahmin. But it was seen that unfettered slavery was an equalitarian principle, and an attempt was made to nullify it. Manu and his successor, therefore, while recognizing slavery, ordained that it shall not be recognized in its inverse order to the Varna system. That means that a Brahmin may become the slave of another Brahmin, but he shall not be the slave of a person of another Varna, that is of the Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or Atishudra. On the other hand, a Brahmin may hold as a slave anyone belonging to the four Varnas. A Kshatriya can have Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and Atishudra as his slaves, but not one who is a Brahmin. A Vaishya can have a Vaishya, Shudra, and Atishudra as his slaves, but not one who is a Brahmin or a Kshatriya. A Shudra can hold a Shudra, and Atishudra can hold an Atishudra as his slave, but not one who is a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Consider Manu on marriage. Here are his rules governing intermarriage among the different classes. Manu says, for the first marriage of the twice born classes, a woman of the same class is recommended, but for such as are impelled by inclination to marry again, women in the direct order of the classes are to be preferred. A Shudra woman only must be the wife of Shudra. She and a Vaishya of a Vaishya, they two, and a Kshatriya of a Kshatriya, this two, and a Brahmin of and a Brahmani of a Brahman. Manu is of course opposed to intermarriages. His injunction is for each class to marry within his class, but it does recognize marriage outside the defined class. Here again, he is particularly careful not to allow intermarriage to do harm to his principle of inequality among classes. Like slavery, he permits intermarriage, but not in the inverse order. A Brahmin, when marrying outside his class, may marry any woman from any of the classes below him. A Kshatriya is free to marry a woman from the two classes next below him, namely the Vaishya and the Shudra, but must not marry a woman from the Brahmin class, which is above him. A Vaishya is free to marry a woman from the Shudra class, which is next below him, but he cannot marry a woman from the Brahmin and the Kshatriya class, which are above him. Why this discrimination? The only answer is that Manu was anxious to preserve the rule of inequality, which was his guiding principle. Take rule of law. Rule of law is generally understood to mean equality before law. Let anyone interested to know what Manu has to say on the point ponder over the following rules extracted from his code, which for easy understanding I have arranged under distinct headings.
Shashank.
Yeah.
You see, while reading Babasaheb Ambedkar's text, and particularly this is a very profound text as we are reading it, and the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has evolved the clarity of the caste system, and some of the way he has defined the caste system in terms of the caste system. What is the caste system? Is that the different castes do not stand as an horizontal series all on the same plane. It is a system in which the different castes are placed in a vertical series, one above the other. And he says that Manu may not be responsible for the creation of caste, but Manu is somebody who has written the constitution of the caste. And we see that the principle of gradation and rank that Manu has evolved in his Manusmriti. Babasaheb Ambedkar gives 3 examples of how the Manusmriti has codified or sanctified the vertical series of the hierarchy. And he is giving the example of a slavery, he's giving an example of marriage, and he's giving an example of a rule of law. And all these three are important, because slavery, because it's not that the slavery was not prevalent in that community. The concept of slavery had been given a very different spin, that only the Brahmin could be a slave of the Brahmin. He couldn't be the slave of other castes. Likewise, when you look at this graded social inequality, the Atishudras can never keep a Brahmin as a slave. Only Atishudra can keep an Atishudra as a slave. And I think this is very significant in terms of understanding that, how the Brahmins were placed above everybody. It is not that the Brahmins couldn't have been enslaved by the Atishudras, they could have been, but the Manu's sanction was that they cannot be. And this discussion is so instructive here. And on the marriage, when Babasaheb Ambedkar is describing the Manu Smriti in terms of the system of marriage, and he's getting into this fact that the Brahmins could marry anybody, but Atishudra cannot marry can marry only people from the Atishudra class. A Shudra can marry Atishudra, but he cannot marry the women from the, or a man, a woman from the Kshatriya community or Brahmin community. So it's, you see, this is a kind of a discrimination. The graded hierarchy was maintained through, the codes about slavery, the codes about marriage, and the rule of law. And this is a very significant. This is like some kind of a legal mind is working, not just a philosophical mind, not just a historical mind, not just a mind that is scientific, but here we can see Babasaheb's legal mind is at work. And so beautifully Babasaheb Ambedkar is expounding everything with the proper references from the Manusmriti. So let's look at the rule of law, and it's education for us also to understand what is the rule of law. Rule of law means equality before law. Okay, go on. As to witnesses.
As to witnesses, according to Manu, they are to be sworn as follows. In the forenoon, let the judge, being purified, severally call on the twice born, being purified also to declare the truth in the presence of some image, a symbol of the divinity and of Brahmins, while the witnesses turn their faces either to the north or to the east. 88. To a Brahman, he must begin with saying, declare, to a Kshatriya with saying, declare the truth, to a Vaishya with comparing perjury to the crime of stealing kine, grain, or gold, to a Sudra with comparing it some or all of the following sentences to every crime that man can commit. 113. Let the judge call. Sorry.
I think this witness is very important. To the Brahmin, the judge will only say, declare. So the Brahmin is open to saying any blah blah things. Okay. To Kshatriya, the judge will say, declare the truth. So for the Brahmin, it is not required to speak the truth. So Brahmin can spin any tale. He can create any myth. So that myth making power, that power to say anything belong to the Brahmin. And the Kshatriya was asked to tell the truth, while the Vaishya, he was asked to comparing perjury to the crimes of stealing, where he was asked whether you stole grain or kin or gold or grain, and to the Shudra with everything, every crime that men can commit. So already the members of the Shudra community were considered to have committed the crime, while the Brahmin was asked only to declare. And I think this is very interesting. Even in the cases of witness, there was a discrimination. And when the British came to India, the Brahmins asked for the special privileges that they cannot be invited in the court to give witnesses. Very interesting sort of a discussion this is. It looks like textual discussion, but if you study it with very keen mind, you can begin to see the various aspects, the way Babasaheb Ambedkar has explored these dimensions. So please go on.
Sure. Let the judge cause a price to swear by his veracity, a soldier by his horse or elephant and his weapons, a merchant by his kine, grain, and gold, a mechanic or servile man by imprecating on his own head if he speak falsely, all possible crimes. Manu also deals with cases of witnesses giving a false evidence. According to Manu, giving false evidence is a crime. Says Manu 1-2. Learned men have specified this punishment, which were ordained by sage legislators for perjured witnesses, with a view to prevent a failure of justice and to restrain iniquity. Let a just prince banish men of the three lower classes if they give false evidence. having first levied the fine, but the Brahmin let him only banish. But Manu made one exception. To women, however, at a time of dalliance or on a proposal of marriage, in the case of grass or fruit eaten by a cow, of wood taken for sacrifices, or of a promise made for the preservation of a Brahman, it is a deadly sin to take a light oath. As parties to proceedings, their position can be illustrated by quoting the Ordinances of Manu relating to a few of the important criminal offenses dealt with by Manu. Take the offense of defamation. Manu says, a soldier defaming a priest shall be fined 100 panas. A merchant thus offending 150 or 200. But for such an offense, a mechanic or servile man shall be shipped. A price shall be fined 50 if he slander a soldier, 25 if a merchant, and 12 if he slander a man of the servile class. Take the offense of insult, Manu says. A once born man who insults the twice born with gross invectives ought to have his tongue slit, for he sprang from the lowest part of a Brahma. If he mention their names and classes with contumely, as if he say, O Devadatta, thou refuse of Brahmin, an iron style 10 fingers long shall be thrust right into his mouth. Should be through pride give instruction to priest concerning their duty, let the king order some hot oil to be dropped into his mouth and his ear. Take the offense of abuse, Manu says. For a mutual abuse by a priest and a soldier, this fine must be imposed by a learned king, the lowest amercement on the priest and the middlemost on the soldier. Such exactly as before mentioned must be the punishment a merchant and a mechanic in respect of this several classes, except the slitting of the tongue. This is a fixed rule of the punishment. Take the offense of assault, Manu propounds. With whatever member a low-born man shall assault or hurt a superior, even that member of his must be slit or cut more or less in proportion to the injury. This is an ordinance of Manu. He who raises his hand or staff against another shall have his hand cut, and who kicks another in wrath shall have an incision made in his foot. Take the offense of arrogance according to Manu. And a man of the lowest classes who shall insolently place himself on the same seat with one of the highest shall either be banished with a mark on his hinder parts, or the king shall cause a gash to be made on his buttock. Should he spit on him through price, the king shall order both his lips to be gashed. Should be urine on him, his penis should be break wing against him, his anus. If he seizes the Brahmin by the locks, or by the feet, or by the beard, or by the throat, or by the scrotum, let the king without hesitation cause incision to be made in his hands. Take the offense of adultery, says Manu. A man of the servile classes who commits actual adultery with the wife of priest ought to suffer death. The wives indeed of all the four classes must ever be most especially guarded. A low man who makes love to a damsel of high birth ought to be punished corporally. But he who addresses a maid of equal rank shall give the nuptial present and marry her if her father please. A mechanic or servile man have an adulterous connection with a woman of a twice born class, whether guarded at home or unguarded, shall thus be punished. If she was unguarded, he shall lose the part offending, and his whole substance if guarded, and priceless everything, even his life. For adultery with a guarded priest, a merchant shall forfeit all his wealth after imprisonment for a year. A soldier shall be fined 1,000 panas, and he be shaved with the urine of an ass. But if a merchant or a soldier commit adultery with a woman of the sacerdotal class, whom her husband guards not at home, the king shall only fine the merchant 500 and the soldier 1,000. Both of them, however, if they commit that offense with the priceless,
I
not
think
only guarded.
I
Sorry.
think we do not need much discussion on this because this is so
Right.
self-explanatory, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So please just read it through.
Okay.
Unless
Sure.
anybody would like to stop and just want if they want to comment or anything, they're free to do that. But I think it's so self-explanatory that we can go on reading. Okay.
So one question arises in the mind.
Yes,
Please,
yes.
bhai.
So it's how these laws has been communicated deep in the society at that time. Means this is the question. Means how they have spread this all this nuisance in the society.
That's what is called the counter-revolution, no?
Yeah. Okay.
So there was a Buddha's revolution, and Buddha was for liberty, equality, and fraternity. And then after that, the constitution, the counter revolution take place. It didn't happen in one day. It took a lot of time to enforce these laws. It took a lot of time to enforce these laws, and Manusmriti, as in the full swing, was never practiced.
Mhm.
His principles were there that the Brahmins are superior. You cannot insult a Brahmin. You cannot cause any offense to the Brahmins. You cannot touch their women, the people from the lower classes, like that. So the Brahmins have impunity. They were above law.
It is declared.
They were above law, and that is when you simplify something like this, that they are above law.
God on earth.
Yeah, God on earth.
Gods on earth.
Bhudev.
Bhudev.
Bhudev. Yes. All right. So go on reading, Shashank.
Yes. Both of them, however, if they commit that offense with the priestess, not only guarded but eminent for good qualities, shall be punished like men of the servile classes, or be burned in a fire of a dry grass or reeds. If a merchant converse criminally with a guarded woman of the military or a soldier with one of the mercantile class, they both deserve the same punishment as in the case of priestess unguarded. But a Brahman who shall commit adultery with a guarded woman of those two classes must be fined 1,000 panas, and for the life offense with a guarded woman of the servile classes, the fine of a soldier or a merchant shall be also 1,000. For adultery with a woman of the military class, if guarded, the fine of a merchant is 500. But a soldier, for the converse of that offense, must be shaved with urine or pay the fine just mentioned. A priest shall pay 500 panas if he connect himself criminally with an unguarded woman of the military, commercial, or servile classes, and 1,000 for such a connection with a woman of a vile mixed breed. Turning to the system of punishment for offenses, Manu's scheme throws an interesting light on the subject. Consider the following ordinances. Ignominious tonsure is ordained instead of capital punishment for an adulterer of the priestly class, where the punishment of the other classes may extend to loss of life. Never shall the king slay a Brahman, though convicted of all possible crimes. Let him banish the offender from his realm, but with all his property secure and his body unhurt.
This is a very interesting law in the Manusmriti, that whatever Brahmin does, he will never be killed. And this came after the counter revolution. The Brahmins were raised to a level after the Pushyamitra Shunga that he cannot be killed. Only thing that can be done is to banish him. So Brahma Hatya, Mahapap, if you read the Brahminical injunctions, there is no greater sin than the killing of a Brahmin. Okay, go on.
Right.
You see, let me take a pause here and comment on something which has been on my mind for a long time. Is this that you see, the Babasaheb Ambedkar has taken so much pains to dig deep into the scriptures of Hinduism, and I'm sure that the majority of Hindus today might not have heard or even read Manusmriti, but they practice it certainly because of the ideals. We have seen the discussion on religious ideals, and the religious ideals have the potency to even override the practical implications, while the secular ideals do not have such kind of a force on the minds of the people. And when we look at the society around us, they are governed by a few ideals. And I'm sure that the majority of the people have not even read what is Manusmriti or what is written in the Hindu scriptures. And Babasaheb Ambedkar has taken so much pains to know, understand everything. Now, there are very loose argument by some of the Hindus against the philosophy of Hinduism, and they stands nowhere. They say that Babasaheb Ambedkar didn't know Sanskrit, so he didn't read Manusmriti, and so on and so forth. It's all lies. It's not. It doesn't take a brilliance of a scientist. Even any layman, any person in India can read Sanskrit. That's not a big deal. And Babasaheb Ambedkar was, of course, he could teach Sanskrit, so he could read Sanskrit. And there were fine translations available by people like Max Muller, whom the Hindus, the Brahmins called Moksha Mullari, and they adored Max Muller. And they did these translations of Manusmriti and so on and so forth. And this is not something that that you need a language to understand all these things. You don't need a language to understand whatever written in the Manusmriti. And you see the kind of crooked mind that Manu had in terms of giving punishment, shaving with urine, what kind of a punishment that is. It's a very convoluted mind. It's a very, crooked mind that was at play when somebody was drafting a constitution like this. It's a very crooked mind at work. It's a very filthy mind at work. The rule of law has no scope. The Manusmriti cannot stand before the rule of law. And Babasaheb Ambedkar, being a legal mind, he's giving the illustrations of the various aspects of law and saying how Manu fails on every single test of the rule of equality or equality before the law. And Dicey, who brought the equality before law in India, the rule of law in India, said that the Dicey, the British gentleman, was responsible for drafting this, what is called the IPC and CPC. You might have heard about the Indian Penal Code and the criminal penal codes. Before that, the codes which were having the power over the Indian mind was the code of Manu, Smriti. And then finally, when the constitutional code came into being, it has overridden everything that has preceded it. And now some people, as we know, are trying to bring back the constitution to override the constitution of India. We know that story. We know that they have been attempting to do it for a long time. So you see the pains Babasaheb Ambedkar has taken to bring out these things from the literature and from the text of the Hindus to make everything easy for us to understand. And we do not pay attention to his writings and speeches. I think it's something that our society must understand, that they have to read, they have to dwell upon, they have to think over, they have to cogitate, they have to meditate on the writings and speeches of Babasaheb Ambedkar. Only then the emancipation is possible. So with this interlude, I would like Shashank to finish this section. Shashank, go on.
Yes, sir. For killing intentionally a virtuous man of the military classes, the penance must be a fourth part of that ordained for killing a priest. For killing a Vaishya, only an eighth. For killing a Shudra who had been constant in discharging his duties, a 16th part. But if a Brahmin kill a Kshatriya without malice, he must, after a full performance of his religious rites, give the priest one bull together with 1,000 cows. Or if he perform, or he may perform for 3 years the penance for slaying a Brahmin, mortifying his organs of sensation and action, letting his hair grow long, and leaving a remote from the town with the root of a tree for his mansion. If he kill without malice a Vaishya who had a good moral character, he may perform the same penance for 1 year, or give the priest 100 cows and a bull. For 6 months must he perform this whole penance. If without intention he kill a Shudra, or he may give 10 white cows and a bull to the priest. No greater crime is known on the earth than slaying a Brahmin. And the king therefore must not even form in his mind an idea of killing a priest. Let the king, having considered and ascertained the frequency of a similar offense, the place and the time, the ability of the criminal to pay or suffer, and the crime itself, cause punishment to fall on those alone who deserves it. Manu, son of the self-existent, has named 10 places of punishment, which are appropriate to the 3 lower classes. But a Brahmin must depart from the realm of unheard in any one of them. The part of generation, the belly, the tongue, the 2 hands, and fifthly, the 2 feet, the eye, the nose, and both ears, the property, and the in capital case, the whole body. How strange is the contrast between a Hindu and the non-Hindu criminal jurisprudence. How inequality is writ large in Hinduism as seen in its criminal jurisprudence. In a penal code charged with the spirit of justice, we find 2 things. A section defining the crime and a section prescribing a rational form of punishment for a breach of it, and a rule that all offenders are liable to the same penalty. In Manu, what do we find? First, an irrational system of punishment. The punishment for a crime is inflicted on the organ concerning the crime, such as belly, tongue, nose, eyes, ears, organs of generation, etc. As if the offending organ was a sentient being having a will for its own and had not been merely a servitor of a human being. Second feature of a Manu's penal code is inhuman character of the punishment, which has no proportion to the gravity of the offense. But the most striking feature of Manu's penal code, which stands out in all its nakedness, is the inequality of the punishment for the same offense. Inequality designed not merely to punish the offender, but to protect also the dignity and to maintain the bestness of the parties coming to a court of law to seek justice. In other words, to maintain the social inequality on which his whole scheme is founded. So far, I have taken for illustration such matters as serve to show how Manu has ordained social inequality. I now propose to take other matters dealt with by Manu in order to illustrate that Manu has also ordained religious inequality. These are matters which are connected with what are called sacraments and ashrams.
Okay, we will take a pause here for today, and we can discuss for a few minutes anything that anybody would like to share or comment. Let's discuss it now.
I think the very purpose of Babasaheb in writing such literature was to wake up the Hindu society,
Yes,
Hindu people.
yes.
They should realize what they are following. And even Brahmin also, they should realize what is in Manusmriti and how you are behaving.
Yes.
In today's society also, this Manusmriti principles are being followed.
Yes.
The same punishment are not being awarded to the people. The class is seen by the judges, mostly dominated by Brahmins only.
Yes.
Our judiciary is dominated by Brahmin only.
Yes.
Only one B.R. Gawai is there.
Yes.
Else, what is it? Who is there in the Supreme Court?
True.
Not
true,
even one OBC.
True. Very true.
So this even Babasaheb wanted that even the right thinking people within the Brahmin community also should realize
yes.
what they are practicing.
Very true. Very true.
So and that's why Babasaheb had taken this much pain to write such book and such thesis.
Yes. 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 Very true. Very true.
Sir, Harsh sir has raised twice his hand.
Harsh bhai,
Sir,
please go on.
yeah. Any questions? I think he is having some questions.
Yeah, I
Harsh
was
bhai,
just
please go
going.
on.
Yeah, no, nothing exceptional, but like I was going through whatever you're reading of the Manu madness. I remember that what some earlier members of our group has compiled some book on that, right? The Manu's madness. And sometime back I was going through that and I was just thinking, this is a good material and we can make a small book out of that. So definitely I'm going to work on that.
Yes.
I think your forewords will be very important on that book, and it will be a very good compilation also, as well as eye opener for a lot of people also.
Yes, yes.
So that is what my thinking is on that today's reading session.
Yes.
So please do share the PDF if it is available.
It is
Yeah,
available,
I
sir.
think
It is available.
It's available. I will once again share.
Yeah. So very interesting. What we can do, we can say Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar on Manusmriti, and we only compile whatever is there in the writing and speeches.
Yeah.
And we can write a forward, not a problem. But I think the title of the book should be Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar on Manusmriti, and the most draconian book in the world, or something like that, the most despisable book in the world. Like that, we should write something.
Yes,
maybe like Dr.
it
Ambedkar
it should be
on
sparking. Yeah.
That's why
maybe
Babasaheb
like
Ambedkar got it burned, no, in 1927. That means he has read it before.
yeah.
That's why on 25th December we used to burn it.
Yeah. True. Very true.
I want to share one sentence of Babasaheb Ambedkar that he had said that Hindu's life is a life of continuous defeat. So this sentence was antagonized Savarkar so much that later on he had written one book titled Seven Golden Leaves of Ancient India, and there he had mentioned about this. So
Send the reference, sir. Send the reference.
Yeah. I will have to search now.
Please
but
search
I
and
just
send,
remembered long back I had read somewhere.
Good.
I'll do that.
Okay, good.
I'll do that.
Good. Anybody would like to comment, share before we end for today? If not, then we will. Okay, Sunil sir.
Sir, I want to just throw some light on this. Manusmriti was followed earlier also, and now also it is being followed. So now what is the solution?
Of course, we have to launch, there was a revolution that the Buddha brought, then there was a counter revolution. Now we have to have the counter revolution.
Sir, if I am maybe allowed to interrupt, what we are doing here, we are doing the counter
revolution. Counter to counter revolution.
Yes. And we have to hold the hand of our nearby person to awake him. Only things that we can make the chain like this only.
Yeah, but only 12 people are doing counter to counter.
No shoes. Babasaheb was only one.
Buddha had started with 5.
Yeah. We have lot of motivational.
I expect many more should join here this class.
No shoes. Mangesh sir, hats off to you, and with folded hand, I am grateful to you for such a wonderful.
I think we should be grateful to Babasaheb Ambedkar, because I personally feel that what Babasaheb Ambedkar has done for us is to enable us to develop in all 360 direction.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
When we read his writing and speeches, that's like training our mind in thinking, training in language, training in understanding the world around us. That's why,
and it's a record that Babasaheb has used means more than new words in his writings than any other person on this earth.
True, very true. I think there is one comment from Shilpi. Shilpi, would you like to share it?
Yes, sir. Jai Bhim to all.
Jai Bhim.
Yes, sir. I mean, after reading such a detailed and thorough account of Manu's law and the language of it, it's all barbaric, and it also makes us wonder and see into the deep psychological issues of a person, not alone of a person, of an entire community, which is ready to mutilate and decapitate another human being, the sight of the blood, and everything involved. So it is also somewhere what kind of a psyche a human being can carry with them, and is willing to go to the lengths of decapitating another human being in their limbs. So this statement of Babasaheb that the punishment for a crime is inflicted on the organ concerned in the crime, such as belly, tongue, nose, ears, this also somewhere makes us analyze and speculate that how come an entire community and especially Manu was ready for his psychopathic tendency to mutilate another human being on the basis of nothing, an absolute absurdity, because the punishments and the organs involved and the crime and the punishment does not equitate or had some rational or logical grounds. The entire system is not logical for the starters. So yes, this is only I wanted to highlight here.
Very pertinent point that we need to do this psychoanalytical study of a Brahmin.
Yeah, yes. Even
And
Kanchanaya Shepherd once in his book Post-Hindu India, the Psychology of Brahmins also gives this idea that, or tries to surface and summarizes this idea of to go into the psychoanalytical point of view of the Brahmin psyche for
yes.
all the for the professionals in the field, of course. So yes, it's a must-have thing.
So, it's a wonderful study. I once wrote a small piece on using Fanonian framework to understand the psychology of Brahmins. And according to his framework, if we apply it to Brahmin mind, we can find that the Brahmins have a very deep inferior complex. Okay, so when you are very deeply inferior vis-a-vis other people, you try to dominate them.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Also the willingness to resort to violence.
Yeah.
I mean, and that going that easily and taking pride in that kind of a psyche that yes, we are willing to do the violence and we are kind of pride in doing that.
Yeah.
That's not normal. That's not like a normal human being should be if you have to be in a society with other human beings. So yeah.
So maybe you can write a very nice paper on this, Shilpi, and we are looking forward to reading your thoughts, because I think this is a very good thought that you have put across. Thank you so much. Okay, anybody else?
We can close the chapter now.
Okay, sir. So maybe next time we all will meet soon and see you soon. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim to everyone.
Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim.